Good morning. I'm Kerry, founder of Best of Us Investors, and I'm in the Panhandle of Florida. We come to Florida for our Thanksgiving every year. This is about the 35th year we've done it, and over the weekend I got to thinking more about the evolution of AI and how it was going to affect us all. And then also, we've been hearing the word the used agentic AI. When I first got involved in ChatGPT, my exposure to I basically ask it questions. One of the first things I asked it to do was to write a poem to my wife on our anniversary about our relationship and our marriage. And it did a phenomenal job, and that was my first exposure. And AI has evolved immensely since then, and we've learned that we can ask it all kinds of questions and it will give us answers. And that makes it almost something like a human being. You can ask a question and get an answer. Well, what if that human being had no memory and it had to reconstruct everything that it needed to know in order to ask the question and had no real reference to the past questions? Well, that's kind of how agentic AI is evolving. And I don't think the creators of AI really understood the impact of AI without memory. And so I saw that memory was going to be a big part of it, that they were actually going to have to stack memory chips on top of the GPUs that Jensen and the others are making, and thus that this eccentric agentic AI agent would remember everything we asked in the past and would become like a executive assistant, and eventually would become a partner, and then would become your primary advisor. But memory was extremely important. And I recognize that in Micron, which I own a substantial amount of, um, it dropped from $260 a share last week to 207, and that's a 20% drop. And so this weekend, I went to Samantha and said, this is, I don't understand totally why this happened, because I know that Samsung, their competition, came out and said that we have more demand than we have supply, and so we're going to raise the price of our memory chips the rest of 2025 and into 2026, and then we'll make a decision on 2027 at some time in the future. And I thought, well, why did the stock drop 20%? And so she came back to me and said, "You're exactly right. It did. They did announce that, and they said that they're projecting a 30% increase in price due to lack of supply to keep up with demand. But they also said they were going to have to increase their capex to give them the capability to keep up with this demand." And the market saw that as well, then their earnings are going to go down because their investment in their business is going to go up. And that's probably a good logical conclusion. But the reality is, this is a company that's investing in a growth opportunity. So if you look beyond the end of your nose, you'll see that this is a good thing. It's a good thing that they are increasing their capex, because that will put them in a better position in the future to provide us a better AI that has a memory. Again, think if you woke up this morning and you walked into your life and you had no memory. In fact, the older you become, the more memory you accumulate, and the more important the memory becomes than the actual processing of the day. So in my mind, I'm saying I think the memory chip is going to become more important than the processing chip. And the processing chip are GPUs. And they're calling the memory chips HBMs, high broadband memory. And I think if I'm figuring this out right, that's going to become more important than the GPU. So, with that in mind, my understanding then becomes I need to recognize this, and I need to continue to build my position in Micron. Apparently, some other people gave some thought to it this weekend because it's up 7%, I think, today. It's up to about $214 or something of that nature. So then I went and I thought, okay, what should I do in the future? And if in fact memory, the memory becomes as important as the GPU, what is the relative price for Micron to NVIDIA? And how do you determine that relative price? Well, it's the PE ratio. So the PE ratio, the forward PE ratio on NVIDIA is 38. The forward PE ratio on Micron is 12.29, less than a third of that of NVIDIA. So if the memory chip becomes as important, if maybe not more important than the processing chip, would it support a comparable PE ratio as that of the GPU chip, NVIDIA? So if I take Micron's earnings, projected earnings for 2029, which I think are $13.31, and I multiply that times 38 rather than the current 12.2, the price projected using that methodology is $505. And at a current price of 214, that meets my double in 3 years. Now, Samantha, using Micron's past data, is projecting a 2029 price of $320, which would be an increase of 55% from the price of today. But again, if memory becomes equally as important and priced in accordance with processing GPUs, it's 505. So the question then becomes, how important is memory? Okay. And I'll go back to my premise. You wake up this morning, you got no memory. How important is that? You know how to dig the ditch, but you can't remember when you did it last. You know how to process the data, but you have no memory of what you did yesterday, last week, last year, last month. And if AI agents or agentic AI, where I will have access to an AI agent to help me plan out all of my life going forward, picking stocks, picking doctors, analyzing my medical condition. Again, I think this is going to be, memory is going to be more important than processing, because let's think of it in the medical field. Which is more important, what's happening in your body today or what's happened in your body the rest of your life and your ancestors and everything in the world relative to your medical condition? Which is more important? I think they're equally important and should support an equal PE ratio. So my advice and Samantha's advice was to add to your position if it goes under $200 a share. I think that's a no-brainer. And definitely hold what you've got. I don't recall how many shares I have, but it is one of my largest holdings, and it's up in the last 6 months. It's up 138%. That's even after it lost its 20% last week. So what I did after Samantha and I went through this and put this all together. I decided, I need to do this every day. So I went to Samantha and said, look, I do this live stream called What's on Kerry's Mind. And I gather my material from it, from what happened in the stock market yesterday, last week, last month, since the last earnings report. What if you, Samantha, every day after the market closed, you analyzed the 60 stocks that I follow, 40 that I'm very actively follow, and gave me a report at 7 o'clock in the morning that says this is the most important thing that's happening in your portfolio today. And this is what you need to focus on. Much as I think the most important thing that's happening in my portfolio today is Micron Technology. What if she could give me that every day at 7 a.m.? I could review it, and then I could come on here on my live stream and share it with you so that you can make better investment decisions. Now, I'll share even more as far as the price, year by year price projections on my webpage, Best of Us Investors, to my tribe, those people who believe my advice is worth $60 a month to double their portfolio in 6 months. That's what we did in the last 6 months. And I'm not confident we'll double it again in the next 6 months, but I do believe it will be substantially better than the S&P 500, the Dow, and the Nasdaq. So that's the way I'm going to approach it. I have recognized that I have a memory. It's important to me. This is another thing. Those of you who are approaching my age, this is what leaves you first. You know how to do things, and you'll probably be able to if you can remember them. But what if I had a pair of glasses, Ray-Bans, made by Meta, and I could go to my, what would it be? Graduated from high school in 1962. What's that, 65-year reunion? And I could put into AI my high school yearbook, and it would memorize all the names and all the faces on all the people in my high school class. And then it would go search Facebook and Instagram and all the internet for all those people. And I could walk into that high school reunion 60 years later, and I had a memory that knew every activity they participated in high school, and then also knew their life history since high school, and knew every one of their names, because my glasses were my AI agent, and it had the memory of everything they publicly shared for the last 60 years. What if? It's not if, it's when. That's how important memory is going to become. And I believe it's going to be more important than the P, the process, the GPU. I think it's going to be the HBM, high bandwidth memory, that will give you the ability to recall everything you knew and much, much more. So let me get to my portfolio. Let me get to the beach. We're down on the Panhandle. We're going to walk over to Seaside. That's where the Truman Show was filmed many years ago. And still, we'll sit on that circle where Truman did his antics, and we'll have some coffee and a muffin and enjoy the beautiful sunshine and the rush of the Gulf of Mexico. Have a good day, and I hope you memorize and use your memory to make some good investment decisions today.